Showdown at Warg-Tooth Crossing, Chapter 12. Kale leaned against the counter as he chewed on a piece of jerky that he'd taken from a conveniently placed jar. He asked, "Do you have any spare crossbow bolts? 9-inch, that is." Conrad replied, "Let me check." He went up a ladder to a box on a shelf near the ceiling of the store. He brought down the box and set it on the counter. "Looks like I do," he said, opening the box. "How many would you like?" 2 dozen if you got them." "I just have a dozen." "That'll do then. And the jerky," Kale smiled, chewing away. "Hey, you got any of that chocolate?" "Just for you and the children, Kale," Conrad smiled, while reaching down for a small metal container under the counter. "Here you are." "Thanks," Kale said, grabbing a handful of the paper-wrapped bars of chocolate. "How much do I owe you?" "Let's see. Call it 2 silver for each bolt, 5 coppers for the jerky, and 6 coppers for each of the 4 bars of chocolate. Comes to 29 silver and 5 coppers. Tell you what, here's 2 gold and keep the change." "Thanks, Kale. Much obliged." Kale smiled and gathered up the bolts in a little cloth bag and dropped the chocolate into a pocket. The jerky hung out of his mouth as he left the store. Walking into the winter sunlight, he spotted Henry pulling up to the store in his wagon. Strangely, the wagon was fully loaded, and Henry had his family with him. "Henry," Kale waved, "coming in for supplies? With the whole family?" Henry stepped down tiredly and looked up at the children, telling them to stay put. He used his hat to knock some dust off his breeches, then looked long at Kale. "What?" Kale asked, puzzled. "We're packing up and leaving, Kale. Going back to my family in Aclasta." "What?" "That's right." "What's going on?" "Scalies hit the Rogersons 4 nights ago. Burned them right out. The rest of us got together. Some are staying, hoping that Bull will get the raid stopped. I ain't one much for hope. I'm pulling my family out." "Bull had his meeting with Sliggeth 2 weeks ago. I thought all this had stopped. In fact, we're supposed to head out to pick up a shipment tomorrow." Henry shrugged. "Don't know, don't care. This here is all going to shit, and I'm leaving. Now, if you'll kindly step aside, I'll get some supplies for the road." Kale moved over to let the man pass, but was bewildered by the news. Shaking his head, he had the presence of mind to tip his hat to Henry's wife. Then, looking at the 3 children, he dug into his pocket and gave them a bar of chocolate each. Martha took his hand. "Thank you, Kale, for all you done. You don't belong here either, leastwise with those men." She nodded her head towards the toad. Kale patted her hand, then moved on across the street to the toad. Inside, it was a normal day with not much happening. Kale strode across the main saloon to Bull's office door. He knocked and heard Bull call, "Come in." "Kale," Bull said, looking up from some parchments scattered on his desk. "Getting ready for that run down to the Toss settlement?" "Sure," Kale said as he walked in. "Mind if I sit down?" "By all means. I'm just clearing up some paperwork. What can I do for you?" "I just ran into Henry Cavill." "Oh? And who is Henry Cavill?" "He's the rancher whose ranch I defended from the Scalies, twice, just recently." "Ah, yes. He says he's pulling up stakes and leaving the area. He says there was another ranch burned out. What the hell is going on? I thought you had the meeting with Sliggeth and took care of this mess." Bull took a cigar from a humidor on his desk. Biting the end of it, he meticulously lit it with a candle and puffed slowly. Finally he said, "There was no meeting." Excuse me," Kale said softly. He reached up and rubbed his eye, which had begun furiously ticking. "You heard me," Bull replied, leaning forward with the stogie in his teeth. Kale moved forward on his seat, placing his elbows on his knees and clasping his hands together in front. He breathed slowly and carefully, then looked up at Bull. "You said that you would meet with Sliggeth to stop the raids. Turns out I didn't have to. How's that?" "Sliggeth sent me another message with a courier. He explained what was going on. Just a little trouble in the tribe is all. It seems that they've been dedicating a lot of their farmland to growing the mushrooms for Somat. Fancy that. I thought they just foraged for them. Anyway, seems that Sliggeth didn't get enough food to put away for winter. So some of the more adventurous and hungry, Bull chuckled, members of his tribe have taken to raiding to fill the gap. He assures me that he's having it taken care of. He isn't. Bull shrugged. Well, what can I do about it? You could enforce the king's writ and protect the damn settlers. Bull leaned back, taking a large drag. There you go again, Kale. Trying to tell me how to run things around here. I mean, I guess I should be thankful you're at least doing it in private this time. This isn't funny, Bull. People are dying. Bull snapped forward. I'm not God's damn laughing, Kale. How long have you been working for me here? A few months? You still don't get what's going on here. Money, Kale. Lots and lots of money. Makes the merc work we were doing during the Toth War look like penny-ante playtime. Tell you what, Kale. You want to know what I've really got planned here? Retirement. Bull spread his arms wide. I keep doing this for a couple more years, and I can buy an estate complete with everything. Just sit there all day, drinking wine and playing with the servant girls. Hell, I might even marry into the nobility and start a family. Sounds great, Kale said through his hands. You're bloody right it sounds great. All I have to do is keep the somat flowing from the Toth, and I'm home free. And if a few settlers get killed, that's not a problem? I mean, you are the sheriff. You are supposed to protect them in the name of the king. Oh, Kale, Bull laughed. Did you learn nothing during the war? The king and the court don't give a damn about a few settlers. They just want to get their reports saying that the Toth are staying on their side of the frontier. And it isn't costing the court much, and that's exactly what they're getting. So you don't care about the families getting killed, while you keep the peace with the Scalies to keep the somat flowing? Bull stared carefully at Kale. Honestly, Kale, not really. Kale put his hands down and stared back. That's not okay, Bull. Careful where you're going with this, Kale. I gave you your 2 extra days down south with 3 squads of my men to play savior. I didn't say anything and let it go. Figured you needed it, but playtime is over. Maybe so. Maybe so? How much money have you made working for me, Kale? You don't blow it on whiskey and playing poker, plus I'll warrant Quinn doesn't charge you extra. Kale gritted his teeth. You must be saving up a bundle, Bull continued. Better than being out there on that pitiful plot of land the king was generous enough to bestow on you for all your dedicated service. That's enough, Bull, Kale simmered as he stood up. On that, you are absolutely right, Bull said, putting his cigar down in an ashtray. That is enough. Now I gave you the choice of leaving before, and you still have it, but my patience is done. Get ready for your ride tomorrow or get the hell out of town. Kale stood with fists clenched. He took a step forward and checked himself. Bull didn't move a muscle, just stared right back at Kale with a sneer. He slowly lifted his right hand with his finger extended and pointed at the door. Kale saw the gleaming whitish gold ring out of the corner of his eye. Trying to summon as much dignity as he could, he turned rigidly and went out the door. He only barely stopped himself from slamming it. Kale avoided all glances and went right up to the bar. He asked Melissa for a whiskey. Standing at the bar, his hands were shaking and his jaw was clenched. He forced himself to breathe steadily and sipped the shot of whiskey slowly. He looked up at Melissa and asked, Is Quinn around? Melissa seemed to be avoiding his gaze while she fussed over drying a couple of glasses. Finally she replied, No, I haven't seen her. Kale looked at her intently, sensing her discomfort. You sure? Melissa set the glasses down and looked at Kale. She's upstairs, okay? Upstairs? Working, you know. Working? Yeah, Kale, what do you think we do around here? Just serve drinks and clean up? Kale rubbed the growing beard on his chin while he sighed. He shot down the rest of the whiskey and briskly left the saloon. He stopped outside and pulled his coat tight. Despite the fact it was the middle of the afternoon, he felt immensely tired. He looked up and down the street and was lost for where to go. Finally settling his sight on Eris's house, he walked over and knocked on the door. The sage welcomed him into the warm dwelling. You look like you've been through a wash-wringer, Eris said, as he bustled over to the fire to stir a pot he had boiling. You could say that, Kale said, sitting down. You got anything to drink? Just tea, I'm afraid, unless you'd like something a little more exotic. No, that's fine. What's going on? Kale exhaled loudly, then proceeded to tell Eris about Henry leaving, the other settler family being killed, and Bull's indifference. Eris gave him a piping hot cup of tea, which had a strangely relaxing, spicy aroma. It's getting worse, isn't it? Eris commented, coming to sit down beside Kale. Yes. Honestly, Eris, I think it's time for me to go. I'd understand if you left, but I'd also be sorry to see you go. You're probably the one thing keeping the gang back from complete depravity. Get real, Eris. Nothing I do here is making any difference. That's not true. Your actions helped save those settlers, who are now either leaving or will shortly be killed. Eris sighed and took a drink from his own cup, nodding slightly. What about you? Kale asked. Why don't you leave? This is no place for you. Maybe that's why I stay. But I don't think I'm just a contrarian. I stay because there's still good folks around here and they need my help, and sometimes even my guidance. You could work all day and night here, Eris, and will only make the slightest bit of difference, maybe none at all. True, but in choosing to act, a difference is made. It may be that the difference is only in me, but it is a difference nonetheless. Those are nice words, Eris, but they aren't going to help you if one day Bull decides to have you removed. He won't do that. He needs me for medicines and such. Don't be too sure. The one thing Bull can't stand for now, as he starts to squeeze this town dry, is anyone not directly loyal to him. You might think you're independent, but Bull sees you either as with him or against him. Kale took a sip of the hot tea. That's why I should get going. It's getting pretty obvious that I'm not with him anymore, if I ever was. You went with him when the money was good. Kale looked up angrily, then nodded. Yes, I did. But I didn't think it meant good people were going to be killed. Reminds me of the way the king threw away our lives when... There was a small knock on the door, and both men looked up. Eris set his cup down and went to the door to answer it. He opened it up, and before he could say anything, Quinn walked in shivering to get out of the cold. She spotted Kale sitting there and came to a stop. Looking at Eris, she said, My apologies, I didn't know you had company. That's no trouble, Quinn. Please come in out of the cold. What can I help you with? Quinn looked over at Kale, then leaned into Eris and murmured, The usual, if you please. Eris replied, The usual for tea, or the usual for, solving a problem? Solving a problem, please. Do you have any made up? Eris sighed and moved to the back, as he said, I always keep some on hand. Unfortunately, it's always in demand. Quinn shuffled and didn't make eye contact with Kale. He eventually said, I looked for you earlier. I know, Melissa told me. I'm not mad, I know what's what. Quinn stared at him now. Well, that's awfully big of you. I don't need your acceptance to do what I do. I wasn't saying you do, Kale said angrily, standing up. I mean, what the hell is this anyway? You move between sweet pillow talk with me into another man's bed with ease, and... Quinn stepped forward to slap at Kale, but he caught her hand and held it. Eris happened to come back into the room at that moment, holding a small pouch. You have no right to judge me, Kale, especially given what you do for a living. Maybe so, Kale answered, tightening his grip. What are you here for, anyway? That's none of your goddamn business. Kale tightened even further. Eris went to step forward, then decided to remain in place. What for? Kale asked again. Kale, you're hurting me, Quinn cried. Don't try that simpering act on me. I'm sure you take worse than this every night. Now Quinn fought back hard, striking with her free hand and kicking at Kale, but his grip stayed unbroken, and she finally stopped. For the love of God, Kale, it's an abortive, Karis piped in. Please, Kale, you're angry, and I understand, but do let Quinn go. Kale abruptly released Quinn and stepped back. She fell into a chair and rubbed her aching wrist. Kale kept looking at her, but addressed his question to Eris. What the hell is an abortive? It ends a pregnancy, Kale. What? It's a pretty simple formula, really. Almost all the women at the Toad have asked for it from time to time. It safely ends an unwanted pregnancy, although the process is somewhat painful. Kale looked down at Quinn. You're pregnant? Quinn looked up at Kale with an angry expression and said, Thanks for the bruise, asshole. Is it mine? Kale asked. Quinn just stared at him. Then Kale started forward, causing her to jump back in her seat. How the hell should I know? She shouted. You're or any of a number of others. What difference does it make? I can't have a child, especially here and now, can I? Kale stepped back and slumped into his chair with shoulders and chin down. Eris walked over to Quinn and asked if she was okay, and she nodded while getting up. They went to the door together, and Eris handed her the pouch, and she gave him some silver in return. She was about to leave when Kale spoke up. Quinn, She stopped and looked back at him. She shook her head, then said, When are you going to see things for how they are, instead of how you want them to be? She then thanked Eris, patting him on the arm, and left into the cold late afternoon. Eris went back to the pot he had slowly boiling and warmed his hands by the fire. Kale put his head in his hands and sat rubbing his temples. After a time, he looked up and said, Some days just aren't worth getting out of bed. He stood up and took his now cool teacup over to the wash basin. I think that caps it off for me, Eris. I'm leaving this hellish place. Any idea where you'll go? Not really. Maybe Bosconia. They can always use mercs there. Hell, maybe I'll try my hand at the Caves of Janxrathra. Suddenly from outside, there was a crashing sound, along with some whoops and hollers. Kale walked over to the window shutter and opened it a crack to look outside. What the hell was that? He said, as he peered up the street. That didn't sound good, Eris said, as he started putting on his coat. Kale opened the door, then looked back at Eris. Where the hell are you going? To come help, of course. You'd be better off staying right here, and you'd be better off leaving town right now. The two men stared at each other in the doorway, then after a moment went out the door together.